Bella, is this has something changed in the settings with this? I oddly had to like enter my credentials to get into the webinar.
I might just copied and paste the general invitation for you. Maybe that's why.
Sorry, I didn't have my speaker on. What did you just say?
I copy and pasted the general invitation link to the Zoom, and that might be why. I can send over the other link if you need.
Usually I get like a panelist or a host link, but I didn't get one for this meeting.
Yeah, I think I just copied and pasted the general link is probably why.
Oh, okay.
Well, and I think because the meeting was moved, it might not have been updated in the city's system to send out those individual invite links. I know that's happened on other meetings we've done.
Yeah, Megan set up this webinar for me, so maybe that setting got messed up.
Okay. Well, am I? It looks like I'm going to be able to share screen. So as long as, yeah, as long as I can do that, I'm fine. Thanks.
Okay, so it looks like a few people are in as like guests, and somebody has their hand up from that, I think. So I'm going to try to unmute them and see if that's a board member or who that is.
Oh, but now they're muted.
Hello. Can you hear me? This is Britt.
Oh, hey, Britt. Okay, great. So Britt.
Hi, I'm having some transportation-related issues today, so I'm just going to be on my phone. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see anything, but I'm here.
Okay, thanks for being here. We appreciate that. Okay, and then somebody else has their hand up in the guest area, so I'm gonna let them speak. Hold on one second. Okay, Jean, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. My screen is very different from what I'm used to seeing. I see Ben and you and Kip on the screen. I don't see me. I hit the join and yet I'm not showing up. Oh, it says join as panelist or stay as attendee. I guess I want to be a panelist.
Correct.
Okay, let's try that.
And then Sergeant Hebert is the last person that's in the attendee list. And if, Michael, if you're there and can join as a panelist, I think we'd really appreciate it. And he has a hand up now too. Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hey, welcome. We're trying to get everybody sorted out. It looks like, Britt, your hand's up again. I just wanted to be sure everything's okay. I don't know. I'm going to lower her hand. If you need something, Britt, raise your hand again. Okie doke.
So are we one short of a quorum?
Let's see. Now we have everybody in the right room. Looks like yes. Oh, Britt's hands up again. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me get her. Okay.
Sorry,
Britt,
that was an accident.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So, let's see. Daniel, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate that. Sergeant Hebert, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you as well. We're still needing one more person to get a quorum, and so we're going to wait maybe 2 more minutes and see what happens here.
By the way, Ben, nice haircut.
Thanks. It's fresh as of yesterday. I feel like I lost a couple pounds, so it was great. I didn't have to diet. All I had to do was cut my hair.
Also, Colin, I want to welcome you. I just saw your name on here as well. So welcome to the panel.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
Gene, I listened to your podcast with Bob Giordano. It was cool.
Oh, thanks. I think I had a little case of the nerves or a scratchy throat or something. I listened to it and like, wow, do I really sound like that? But yeah, it's nice. We might get back on in the future. I don't know if any other board members have any things in particular that they want to go on. He does it once a week, I think. And yeah, really nice guy, really nice guy. Has anybody done much riding out in the smoke?
Not more than I have to. Just some
They should.
errands and stuff like that.
Yeah, you don't want to take the baby out for a ride with that too.
He's becoming a little brat, less of a baby.
Uh-oh. Join the real world.
Yeah. Danny, watch out. You have like 20 more good months.
I just entered the best period, 2 months. And regular sleeping patterns and not really moving at all. So it's good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good window there. Well, gee, I was really hoping to see Corey after he was coming back to the board.
Yeah, he wrote, I know Jess a couple weeks ago, haven't seen anything, emails from him recently. So yeah, hope everything's okay with him. He said his vaccination helped a little bit. He's still got some, I guess, good days and not so good days. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
All right, I sent some emails. If anyone has numbers they can text, I would appreciate that. Bella, do we have a quorum RSVP?
I have Jessica Daughtery Goodburn as accepted on the calendar invite with the link, but I had no response from James or Chris.
Well, James is usually very good about these.
Yes, but it's summer. Woo! We got a quorum. Oh, Jessica, welcome. Thank you so much. Wait a minute. Maybe she's in the other room. Let me look. Nope, she's in this room. Okay. All right. So we'll call the meeting to order at 3:08 because we have a quorum. Usually we show a bunch of things on the screen for anyone who would like to provide public comments. And so if you, Bella, could put that on the screen, that would be great. All right. So basically, if you would like to join this webinar, you can go to the web address that's on the screen, which is www.missoulapublicmeetings.com. If you join the meeting by clicking that link, then you can raise your hand for public comments. If you are on a computer while in the webinar, you can click participants and then raise or lower hand. If you're calling from your iPhone while in the webinar, you can hit more and raise and lower your hand. Or if you're on a dial-in phone while in the webinar in Zoom, press *9 to raise your hand and press *9 again to lower your hand. Public comment alternatives are, you could leave a voicemail at 552-6012, or you can send an email to council@ci.missoula.mt.us. All right, let me see if we have anyone else joining as an attendee.
Looks
Oh,
like
James.
James is in there as an attendee.
James is in here. Hold on, let me make him a panelist. I don't know why everybody is in there. Okay. All right, so welcome. We have lots of guests today. It's super packed schedule, so we're going to really quickly just do the roll call for the records for who's attending. I'm here, Jessica Tuberty. Kip Beckwith is here. On the board, Britt Arnson is here. Jean Schmidt is here. Jessica Doherty Goodburn is here. James Walter is here. So I think I got everybody. Did I miss you? If I did, please let me know. Okay, so very quickly, we're
Just
going
want to,
to
for Bella's benefit as our note taker, I want to acknowledge that from staff, Ben Weiss, Aaron Wilson, Michael Hebert, and Colin Woodrow are all here as well.
Got it.
And then from visiting from ASUM Transportation, Daniel Gunblock is here.
Thank you, Ben. All right, so moving forward with public comments, I'm going to see if we have anyone new that's joined. Seeing none, we're going to move forward. If anyone new pops up, please let me know, but I don't see anyone else. We're going to move on to general board comments. I basically just have one, which is I would like you to think through during the meeting whether you would be interested in having the board meet later in August, recognizing that people have vacation and their schedules tend to be a little bit in flux, and either meet August 10th or August 17th. And so just think about that and we'll revisit it at the end of the meeting. Anyone else have any other board comments? Raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move forward. Oh, I skipped approval of the previous. Oh, wait, Jean's got his hand up. Sorry, Jean, hold on. Go ahead.
Yeah, just quick, and maybe I could bring it up later, but it's on my brain right now. And I don't know if this has been either for you or through you to Parks and Rec, whoever's in charge. And I think I brought this up before on the Milwaukee Road Trail towards the west end. There's a, right before you get to, about 1/10 of a mile before you get to the Reserve Street tunnel underpass, towards the end, there's a very sharp S-turn. It just goes, makes a real sharp, if you're heading west, makes a very sharp right and very sharp left. There's some shrubbery that grows up around there. And within the last month or 5 weeks, my wife has had 2 near misses with people coming the other direction and cutting across. And they have not put up a dividing line like they have on some of the other curves. And I think beyond this, it could use a couple of other modifications if possible to put up some type of a warning sign, especially westbound, that it's a sharp blind curve right before you cross the street. And a lot of people just cut right through that curve because it is so sharp and it's so narrow. So she always slows down, but she's always, she's almost had head-ons with people coming, zooming around there. So whatever kind of signage or painting we can do to keep that area a little bit less dangerous, I think would be appreciated by probably plenty of people, especially with kids who are smaller and harder to see.
Thank you, Jean. I
Thanks,
think
Jean.
that's great.
my quick answer to that is that we've looked at it briefly in our transportation safety team, and really right of way is the constraining factor there. And I've brought it to Parks' attention, and so from the engineering perspective, there's not much we can do. I have not gotten to talk to anyone at Parks about it yet, and I'll thanks for the reminder, and I'll put it back on their radar.
Thanks. I noticed that we skipped approving previous minutes. And so for board members, if you could briefly review minutes from the prior meeting. I only have one change, and that was because of the math change. The recommendation was for 4 city staff to be added for the bike programs, and from 6. So that would be my only edit. Otherwise, I thought they looked great. Jean, your hand is still up. Do you have a comment on that, or is that from before?
Sorry, no, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So that looks great. Does anyone have any concerns about the prior minutes? All right. Can we have a motion to approve the prior minutes?
And move the prior minutes be approved.
Thank you. And we have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. And now, because we have so many wonderful guests, Ben, I would like, as we move into the business of the meeting, how would you like to handle the order of visitors?
Aaron let me know that he has a meeting coming up, and so I'd like to go with Aaron first, and then Sergeant Hebert, and then Colin, and then Danny, and then myself, if that works for everybody else.
All right, that sounds awesome. Thank you so much. If for new board members, Aaron, if you don't mind letting them know about the program we're discussing.
That's basically what we're doing is kind of providing the background to this, and a little bit of explanation of why we're doing it this late. Corey kind of said, "Hey, I thought we were supposed to get this earlier," in an email to us, and there's as we'll hear, there's kind of a reason why we didn't bring anything forward, and the short answer in the preview to Aaron's presentation is that nothing really has changed from last year, and so it's largely the same CIP projects. But yeah, Aaron, I'll turn it back over to you. Sorry.
Yeah, so we wanted to bring forward, I guess these are combined, right? The CIP and the TIP.
Yep, we're going to talk about the CIP and the TIP, and it's worth differentiating and kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, but you're here to talk about both.
Yep. So we have 2 ways that we're really look at projects for funding projects for transportation. One is the community improvement program through the city, and we've talked with you all quite a bit about that over the last year or 2, and we'll give kind of a quick update and an overview on where we're at in our recommendations for the budget for FY20 fiscal year 22, which for the city started July 1st, but the budget won't be adopted for likely another month or 2. And then the other program that I'll talk a little bit about is more focused on the federal funding side of transportation investments. So that's the Transportation Improvement Program. And that is managed by the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is staffed in our office, but is more of a regional funding entity. So maybe we'll start with the CIP, because that's a more straightforward one, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the federal funding and sort of what's coming up, or kind of an overview of what the TIP is. And what our schedule is for getting that adopted, and how you all might be able to provide some comments on that. So for the CIP, if you'll remember, we did some presentation, or I guess for those of you who are new, we did some presentations last year on a new way to prioritize projects for the Community Improvement Program, which is where all of the city's transportation funds get programmed to specific projects. And the goal was really to have a more to repeat words, a goal-driven and data-driven process for selecting projects. So that we're really prioritizing those projects that are going to help us meet our goals from the long-range transportation plan, or our facility master plans, or some of the other city strategic goals around equity and safety and economic development. So we have a whole list of criteria that we score all the projects with. We've ranked them. This year we did update the list with some new projects. Every year it seems like there's a new project or two that comes up for a variety of different reasons. Some of them are development, some of them are good opportunities, or just projects that have arisen for whatever reason. And so the goal is every year we will go through this process of updating scores for projects, seeing how they rank compared to others, and then make decisions on what gets funded based on that ranking. So it allows us to weigh trade-offs. We're looking at the whole list of potential projects, not just whatever projects are being brought forward, or sort of the changing priorities year to year. And so we can better make decisions and weigh those trade-offs of what we're not doing, not just what we are doing. And I think that's an important part of the decision-making process that we're trying to undertake when we're making these kinds of sizable investments in the transportation system. So Ben, do you want to go through sort of what we've done and updated, and kind of just walk them through this scoring sheet real quick?
Sure, yeah. So what you're looking at is kind of our master spreadsheet of projects. We have about 90 projects that have been, that came out of the long-range transportation plan, the different facility master plans, the bicycle facilities master plan, the pedestrian facilities master plan. Some of them were on our existing list before we kind of reset the way that we did this. And so there were projects that our engineering division had in the works already. Some of them come up, they might not have been on our radars, but have come up either because of development or federal funding available, like the build grant. And so we score these projects on a list of criteria. Again, we gave these presentations, a series of presentations at Bike Ped Board last year, but the first category is plan conformity, connectivity, access, which we talk about access to destinations, safety, which looks largely at crash history, equity, leverage. I feel like I'm missing one. Plan conformity. Connectivity. That is connections to other facilities. Access is connections to destinations. Safety, equity, leverage. So are there other projects that it builds on, such as maybe a sewer project is going in, and does that make it easier to do a roadway project at the time, that sort of thing. And then readiness. Have we done the requisite studies? Have we partnered? If it's on an MDT route, are we working with MDT? Do we have a plan in place that we're ready to go on? And so all of those yield an ultimate project score. And then on, if you'll remember, on council feedback, safety and equity are worth double of all of the other categories. And so the top projects were recommended for funding last year. The CIP, the Community Investment Program, looks at 5 years of local funding and programs out the projects that we think we can do in that time. And basically, within the over the last 12 months, we've done a little bit of background work on some of these, but we haven't advanced them too much further. So the same, and costs of projects have gone up. So largely the same projects that were in last year's CIP are being advanced in this year's CIP. The number one score is the West Side Area Replacement Project. This is basically the neighborhood bounded by Railroad Street to the north, Scott Street to the west, Broadway to the south, and Orange to the east. It would be completing the sidewalk network within there, adding bike lanes to Spruce Street, changing Alder to angled parking, improving some intersections, notably at Owen and Broadway and at Alder and Orange, completing the trail connection to the Bitterroot Trail at Pine Street, and improving the parking lot and access at the North Side pedestrian overpass. Those are kind of the major components of that project. They all fit together to improve mobility across modes in that neighborhood and to downtown. And that's really why that project scores so high, because it's all of these moving parts that work together really well. Each individual project might not score very highly, but together they really combine to build on each other effectively. A new project that was added this year that actually jumps to the top of the list that we're working with MDT to try and find funding for is the Broadway Tool California intersection. When we have a little bit more info, we'll bring a presentation to the board about that. But basically, MDT nominated a project at that intersection that did a little bit to improve some safety and operations there. And we've been kind of going back and forth with them a little bit about can we tweak some design to actually really improve connectivity and safety for everyone, especially pedestrians crossing Broadway. And can we get people across there a little bit easier? Higgins is the study that is just getting ready to kick off, and I'm going to talk about that in my update more in the future. California Street is still a high scorer and still remains unfunded. That really is going to require MRA or some other money being brought to the table before that gets off the ground. Broadway Cooper is being included in the Russell Street project. Kent Central is a Greenway project that we're working towards, but that one's a little bit further out in the tip, maybe in year 4 or 5. Burton Street is one that we're working on with MRA and with a development there to help make the neighborhood Greenway connection. Eaton Street, as you remember, we were putting forward a sidewalk project there on Eaton, and we applied for a grant for that. It's moving forward kind of regardless, but it would be a lot faster and easier if we get the grant for it. Same thing with South Avenue. There's some right-of-way issues and there's some funding issues, but that's moving forward. The build grant is moving forward. That got delayed a year also due to some funding issues and some engineering challenges. Ron's River Trail, this is a new one. This is completing the missing section between Orange and Beaver Street and widening the trail through Kiwanis and Best Reed Park. This one has potentially been rekindled due to some redevelopment potential. Turner Ward North 5th is a sidewalk project going east-west across the north side. Some components of that project are going to be hopefully bid this year for construction early next year as part of a sewer project, I believe, or maybe a water project. I always get those two confused. Although when you're drinking, you know the difference really quickly. The 10th Eaton Spurgeon is an east-west connection through Franklin to the Fort. This is where we kind of fall off of what is fundable within our 5-year window. But these are, again, some of the top scoring projects. Ivy Franklin Park is one that is moving forward. North Russell is one that we're looking at bike lanes just through our regular maintenance project this year. We're going to see that happen. But again, I'm happy to share kind of this full list, but again, last year we developed this list last year. The board saw several presentations on it, which is why I didn't bring it back this year, because other than a couple new projects, which we don't really have funding for yet, or we don't know enough about them to know if they will be funded, not too much has been changed.
Great, thanks, Ben. And since Ben gave kind of a lot of detail on those specific projects, I thought I'd just kind of quickly share my screen. Maybe if I can, there we go. All right, can you all see this map? Just kind of reiterating what Ben said, and I wanted to highlight a few things. One, that there are a number of different kinds of projects that are included in the CIP. So we have a good combination of roadway projects, sidewalks, complete streets, and neighborhood greenways and trail projects. We also have a good amount of geographic diversity. So we're doing some projects in a number of different neighborhoods. So you'll see the Ivy Franklin Greenway. Not all of this is currently funded, but it's underway, and we're starting to work on design for at least the sidewalk portion of that and getting the portion from 3rd up to I believe Mount done. So that project's moving forward. And sort of the central part of Missoula, we have the Eden Street sidewalk project in the Franklin to the Fort. We have a north side project at Turner Warden North 5th. West Side area mobility, and then some complete street projects, including the build grant out in the Mullen area and Lower Miller Creek Road, which wasn't really one of our higher scoring projects, but it's a project that was in development and has been for a number of years and is likely to primarily be funded through improvement districts and maybe some impact fees. And it has a safe route to school safety component to it that's really important for that neighborhood.
And it's going to be development driven too. That's another
Yeah.
one that we're going to rely pretty heavily on adjacent development to help bring that project through.
There's some projects in that area that tie in really well with keeping it on schedule and helping to make those connections. And then we have South Avenue as another complete street that's been in development for a number of years. It has really good benefits in terms of access to Big Sky School, Fort Missoula Regional Park, the hospital, transit route. There's a number of benefits to that project. So, and then there are some smaller projects that we've been able to fund. Maple Street, this is a sidewalk project that is part of the Trinity project at Broadway and Mullen Road. So that is the sort of one component of that project that has the navigation center and a bunch of housing, and providing the sidewalk allows for a little bit better connection from that development out to Broadway and the transit stops. And it's a minor project, but it's helping improve the connectivity for that development, where we're likely to see a lot of residents who don't have access to vehicles or need to find other ways to access that location. So that's a small project that was able to help that much larger effort around affordable housing and treatment and other public services. And then there's another small project on Minkler Loop that's improving the road and parking and trail access into the North Hills. And that is a parks project primarily, but there are some transportation funds going to that to improve the roadway and help with that parking and access project. So I don't know that there's, and then the Russell Street crossing, again, kind of more on the south side of town. This is one that we've been working on for a year or two, and we're excited to have that funded and hopefully getting designed and constructed relatively soon, and makes really good connections in an area where we could really use it and addresses some safety concerns at that crossing. So like I said, I think a good diversity of both project types and locations in the CIP, and where all of these projects are doing something to help achieve our goals in our long range planning in transportation. So excited to be on this path with the CIP that's really more of a goal driven and outcome based approach to prioritizing projects. So that's the CIP. Any questions on that before I move into the transportation improvement program?
So Aaron, it's my understanding that it's our statutory obligation to provide a recommendation or a letter of feedback on the CIP. And so what would be the most helpful to you from the board?
That's a good question. I think if there are any projects in that priority list that we should be funding, I think we haven't really added anything new since last year. And so it may be worth going back and looking at what your recommendation was last year related to the CIP and whether we're actually doing what we said we would and what you recommended for us to do, and then reiterate that. I think that's always helpful for council to see that, but not a lot has changed since then. So I don't know that there's a tremendous amount to focus on here, or that we would need input on, unless you have thoughts on these projects or something that's missing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? All right. Well, then I'll move into the transportation improvement program. So we have somewhat of a similar approach, but it's a little bit different because it's federal funding and there's a lot more funding available, and not all of it is programmed at the local level. So can you all see this screen for the transportation improvement program? So this is a little bit of background on this. This is one of the required elements or products that the Metropolitan Planning Organization has to do as our role as an MPO. And essentially what this does is programs all of the federal funding that's being spent within the MPO boundary. And so that's really just the urban part of Missoula County around the city. Extends out west to the Y, east out to Clinton and Tura, and south just past Blue Mountain Road. And so it's really that core part of Missoula and where we have more urban development patterns. And so we put this together. Typically, we do a TIP every year at the MPO level. It's based on a federal fiscal year, so it's not exactly in alignment with the city. It starts October 1st and runs through September 30th. And it's required to be a 5-year plan. And so we're looking out through the next 5 fiscal years and trying to program what we are reasonably sure is going to be the available federal funding. There's a number of different federal funds that go into this. Some of them are programmed at the state level or the district, the Montana Department of Transportation district level. That district encompasses Ravalli County, Missoula County, sort of the western side of the state, up through Whitefish and over to Idaho. So it's a very big district. Some of those funds come into Missoula and go into the Transportation Improvement Program and have to be reviewed and approved by the MPO before those projects are actually funded and constructed. And so it gives us an opportunity locally to have some control over how we're spending federal dollars in our region. It's based on the long range transportation plan. So any project in the TIP has to be included in the long range plan before it can be funded. And so there's a direct connection there. And essentially this is our 5-year plan for how we're implementing the long range plan in terms of the federal dollars that we're spending. So I'm going to go over this is a version of the 2020 through 2024 Transportation Improvement Program. We don't actually have our full 2022 to 2026 TIP ready and posted yet, but it will be up on our website in the next probably sometime this week is what we're hoping. Where the process for adopting the TIP is it goes to our advisory committee, TTAC, Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. They provide technical input and any recommendations, and then it goes to the Transportation Policy Coordinating Committee to be adopted. That'll happen in August. And so there is some time here for you all to review it and potentially provide some recommendations at your August board meeting that will be timed really well with it's a couple days before TTAC and then several weeks before TPCC. So there's a good opportunity there to have some discussion next month if you have any input that you would want to provide for the TIP. So we'll be bringing it to our committees next month. There are a lot more funding sources in this document. So one of the things you'll notice is that and I'll go through a few of these, but we have a lot of different funding sources that we're programming, everything from federal highways, interstate funding, national highways. We have a couple of local discretionary funding sources that I'll spend a little bit more time on because those are directly programmed by the MPO locally. And then there are transit funds as well, or things like earmarks, which are starting to return at the federal level. And so hopefully we'll start seeing those in the future. But a lot of different funding sources. And so this document is broken down by what projects are being funded by each funding source. So as you're navigating through it, you'll see sort of how that funding breaks down. There's also a fair amount of text at the beginning just talking about, if you want to learn more about what the TIP is and what we're doing and how it relates to our performance measures and all of the long range transportation planning. But I won't spend too much time on that because it's a lot of very technical details that might not be very interesting unless you're really into transportation at the federal level. But what is helpful in here is it really breaks down funding by project and year and phase. And so you'll see for every funding source looks very similar where there's the sponsor of the project. So whether that's going to be a city or MDT project, the name of it, description, a brief description of what the project is, and then when that funding is being programmed. So again, much like our CIP, we're trying to start to look at a 5-year program. The tip is looking out over those 5 years. And so some projects will be done in a single year, others get broken out amongst multiple years, and we try to capture all of that. And then it tells how much of that is local versus federal funding. So most federal dollars come with strings attached that you have some local funding that goes into it. A lot of that here gets funded by the state, but some of it is covered by the city for funding that comes directly to the city or the county. So then we have a project list. So if you just want to get a sense of what projects are in the tip, this is a good way to just see what projects we're funding. And it's again broken down by funding source, but there's not a ton of detail in this list. So this would be the easy overview of what types of projects are being funded. And then we also have revenue, so we can look at where we're getting the funds to do federal funds to do all of these projects. And you can see there's quite a bit of federal dollars coming through Missoula at any given time. I think over in this 5-year tip, our projected revenue was about $182 million, which is quite a bit, but that's broken out between maintenance. There's a number of really large projects that we have going, like the Russell Street project, Higgins Bridge, the Build Grant, a number of these large projects. So lots of federal dollars come through Missoula. So then getting into the individual tables, I want to spend a little bit of time on 2 funding sources. The congestion mitigation and air quality is one of them. This is a funding source that we get in Missoula because of our air quality issues that have actually gotten much better. I think we're in maintenance on all of our air quality measures at this point, but we still get the funding because we don't want to go back into violations on things like our carbon dioxide, our particulate matters, the PM 2.5 and PM 10, that CMAQ is really intended to help mitigate those issues. So this is the funding source that helps fund some of Ben's programs related to bike racks and education and interns, and funds Missoula in Motion and the city's street sweepers. And these are all programs that the MPO has prioritized for funding in CMAQ. But you'll notice in our last tip, we projected a potential fairly sizable balance of CMAQ funds of almost $5 million by 2024. And so we have some opportunity here to program federal dollars for our local projects in the long range transportation plan. And this is something that we're going to be talking about at TTAC and TPCC over the next, certainly the next month and probably the next couple of years, about how to prioritize those funds. And so this might be an area for the board to really think about in the long range plan, which projects should we prioritize funding, and which ones might be the most appropriate for CMAQ. And again, keep in mind for this, all federal funding sources have different criteria and strings attached. This one in particular has air quality requirements that any project funded has to have a demonstrated benefit to air quality. So that could be either through mode shift, shifting people to biking and walking, or reducing congestion, or improving technology and air quality through more efficient transportation. Then the other funding source is our surface transportation program. I'll just mention this there isn't currently any funding available. It's all currently committed to Russell Street. But I did want to point this out that in the future, as we get that project completed, this is a key funding source to start doing our local priority projects from the long range plan. And the MPO does have discretion about how these funds are programmed and what projects are being funded. And then the rest of these funding sources are largely programmed at the state or through Mountain Line transit funding. But there are a lot of projects that get funded for either maintenance or road reconstructions, railroad crossings. There's a number of safety projects. And so there are a lot more projects that will be happening over the next few years through these federal funds. So I think with that, So I guess just to reiterate that we adopt a new tip every year. We amend them a couple of times throughout the year, but this is a good opportunity to look out at that next 5-year period and see what projects are being funded and provide any input, whether it's to MPO or MDT's projects or mountain lines. And comments next month would be absolutely timely for that process.
Aaron, that sounds great. So I have a couple of questions. Would it, after the meeting, could you email this document and then the list for the CIP to all of the board? And then, and what dates are the meetings in August so we can decide our schedule with that in mind? If you can, I mean, if you need to look them up, that's cool, but I would appreciate that because it's nice to look at those over time because they're long lists.
Yes. Yep. We'll definitely get these out to everyone, and we'll try to let you know as soon as possible when our tip is up on the website, or you can just track through the MPO's website, which is MissoulaMPO.com. So.
Thank you so much. I look forward to talking about that more in August. All right. I believe the order is Sergeant Hebert is next. Is that correct, Ben? Okay, welcome, Sergeant Hebert. I'm Jessie Tuberty. It's great for you to be here. We invited you to our board so that we could have the board hear from you about what you think are bicycle and pedestrian issues, and then have board members provide questions that you will come back in August and hopefully answer for us.
Sure.
All right, awesome. So I'll let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you see as bike pedestrians' most important issues.
Sure. So I'm Sergeant Michael Hebert. I've just recently taken over the traffic position for the Missoula Police Department. So I'm just trying to bite off as many chews as I can bite off right now to learn what goes on with the traffic slot. As far as pedestrian and bicycle issues, and this is just anecdotal for me right now, what really seems to be the problem is mostly vehicles don't pay attention. That's what I've seen anyways with bicycle vehicle crashes and pedestrian vehicle crashes. What I plan on doing in the next 2 to 3 months is what I'd like to do is figure out how to data mine some of our accident reports to try to figure out better what's going on. It's not something I have access to right now, but I'm in the process of learning where I can go to get that information. It's a lot of work. The traffic crash program for the Missoula Police Department encompasses 3 accident investigators, 2 of my motor units who take a lot of crashes, as well as myself, as well as individual officers during those times when we don't have other accident investigators on, and we are always busy. So, and only getting busier. The number of crashes we have every day is just, in my mind, going up. Again, anecdotal. Just seems to me that that's the way it is. I've been doing this for 17 years, and it's definitely not how it used to be. So that's where I'm at right now, just trying to get a handle on what exactly is going on. I mean, I know what intersections car versus car crashes are a problem. And as far as pedestrian and bikes, if there's a trend towards certain intersections, that's something I'll be looking for.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to say that we really appreciate the annual report that the police department provided this year. I think it was the first annual report, and I found it to be super helpful. I read through the whole thing, and it definitely shows that vehicle-on-vehicle collisions are centered around Reserve Street. It didn't have as much detail about vehicle-on-pedestrian, vehicle-on car collisions, but I do think it is an amazing place to start and work from, and having that information is, I think, super helpful. I forgot to say that in the beginning. As far as board members go, if you have questions that you would like Sergeant Hebert to, investigate or look into between now and August, please, raise your hand and let's provide him with a list. I think that because I've been a teacher and I have a child in public school in Missoula, and he has been all the way from elementary all the way through high school. My question for you is it unreasonable for the school safety officers at the high school to be in their squad cars outside of the school buildings when school releases for lunch, for open lunch where the students leave in their vehicles, and for when school releases? Because my observation is that when the teenagers are releasing from school at those times, it seems super dangerous for the students that are walking or on their bicycles. And I think maybe just having a squad car there would be a deterrent. Right. But obviously, if they were ticketed, I think people would be on their best behavior. But as it is right now, it feels a little bit like mayhem. And when the high school releases, as far as the traffic goes, and I know the school safety officers have obligations, but if you could look into whether that would be a reasonable thing for them to do, just for 30 minutes, just as a deterrent. I think that from my perspective, that would be super, super helpful. And then when my son was younger, what I also thought would be helpful would be if the traffic police, when school first starts at the end of August or early September, if they could be just full on enforcing of school zones. So just
I can mention both of those actually. As far as the school zones go, it's already a plan of mine. Right now I have 2 motor units that transition to traffic units once the season ends. Hopefully I'll have 3, possibly 4 within the next 3 to 4 months. And that will be a priority. It's already a personal priority when I run traffic overtime during the school year. I run those zones often, and we will continue to do so. And I will push that to my officers. As far as the SROs go, I think first assumption is you're making the teenage drivers don't drive very well. And that's probably a positive belief. I know my SROs try to get out, especially the SRO in Sentinel, Officer Monaco, and I believe Officer Malone before him did the best they could to get out and run traffic around those streets. Sentinel seems to have a higher number of teenage drivers, and it's more internal Missoula. I'm really not sure what if the Big Sky officer was able to do that as well, because they also have a lot of drivers into that school. But that's something I can address with them as well. And I know they do try to do that at times, both in the morning and at night. I'm not really sure what their agenda is during the lunchtime periods when a lot of the teens are released. But that's definitely something I can bring up with the SROs and has been done in the past. So.
Excellent. Okay, well, those are my 2 questions. Let's see what else we got. If you have questions. Oh, sorry. Jean, you got your hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah, Jesse. Sergeant Hebert. Again, thanks for being here. One question I kind of want to clarify in my mind. For the last couple of years, at least, Bob Giordano at Free Cycles has done a bit of a deep dive, if you will, into car-bicycle collisions, what some of the possible sources have been, if there's been any particular intersections or issues in terms of, was somebody running a light? Was somebody riding the wrong way? Was somebody without lights? Was it somebody coming off the sidewalk, etc.? And I believe that was Mr. Giordano was connecting with Sergeant Welsh, who I think may have retired or changed position. Are you?
That's correct. He has retired. Yes.
Okay. And are you in his slot? Are you a PI?
I am not. Sergeant Welsh was the the public information officer.
Right.
So there is a new PIO right now.
Okay. Okay. So I haven't touched base with Bob and see if he's connected with the new PIO. Do you have any background on that officer, and can you share that?
Only what I've seen and what I've experienced. Again, I would really like to mine the data. An accident generates an ungodly amount of data. Every accident has literally 100 drop-down boxes of information we add to it. And bicycle involved actually, is always one of those things. Was there a bicycle involved, along with every other bit of data that goes with that accident or that crash? I can't help believe that there are certain intersections that lend itself to bicycle versus vehicle crashes. Just off the top of my head, Orange and Craig seems to be one of those kind of intersections. It's getting busier with people coming off of Craig onto Orange, making that turn and just not seeing bicyclists as they travel in the bike lane. Another thing that I've seen just since I've been here, and again, it's just my experience. I can't give you numbers to back it up. It seems like we've had quite a few where bicyclists are on streets and people just aren't watching, or on the sidewalk, excuse me, and people just aren't paying attention to bicyclists on a sidewalk going against traffic. They're looking one way to make that turn. And we've had a couple non-serious kind of things where either the bicyclist runs into the vehicle or the vehicle taps the bicyclists because they're not going at speed coming out of these intersections or these parking lots. But that seems to be, I would guess would be a fairly significant cause of some of these bicycle vehicle crashes. But again, that's my goal is to try to, Jessica brought up the Reserve Street thing. That I think everybody in Missoula understands that every intersection that crosses Reserve is a dangerous intersection for vehicle versus vehicle crashes. But I'd also like to try to figure out if there are the same kind of intersections that are vehicle versus either pedestrian or vehicle versus bicycle crashes.
So I guess the question that would come from that, Sergeant Hebert, would be, should bikes be walked when on the sidewalk in certain areas of the downtown core? So still okay to have a bicycle?
My personal view on that is yes, they should, especially in areas. I've seen bicycle versus car crashes in areas where there are actually bike lanes, yet people aren't using the bike lanes for whatever reason, and then the driver is just not paying attention to that fast of a moving, Sorry, I got other things going on my computer. Just aren't paying attention to that on a sidewalk. Maybe they're looking for a walker who is slow, but not a bike that is coming through. So yeah, and coming to traffic, I've talked to my accident investigators quite a bit about some of this thing, some of this stuff. I review every accident that comes through in the department. And one of the things I didn't know is that it's not illegal to ride your bike on the sidewalk. I guess I was just under the assumption, especially where there are bike lanes, that would be the case, and it's not. And I've seen multiple accidents where bicycles are riding against the traffic or on the wrong side of the sidewalk, and that driver is just not paying attention to things in that direction because they're making a turn one way or the other.
Sergeant?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Gene Schmitz again. Yeah, if I may, that's one of the things I think, and Ben can confirm this, that we try to do in education programs for cyclists, that, if they are on a sidewalk, they should really be acting at, first of all, pedestrian speeds, especially when they enter a crosswalk, for just that reason. So, we're trying to do our educational part on the cyclists. In terms of the motorists, I think it's hard for them because in some ways, again, it's such a relatively rare occurrence, and people tend to get into certain habits and kind of cut corners a little bit in terms of saving themselves time. One of the things that I think applies to both bicyclists and pedestrians, you mentioned Craig and Orange Street, where you are often going to have and this could be any intersection, the person who's making a right turn, let's say they're waiting to do a right turn on red, or if they're at a stop sign or whatever, and basically they're there ready to make that right turn, and their eyes are always to the left, looking for that opening in traffic. And then either a pedestrian or a bicycle starts to come across the front of their vehicle, and sometimes they're actually out blocking the crosswalk either partway or all the way, and somebody decides to walk around the front of them. And then when they do that, they see that opening in traffic and they start to make that turn before they actually turn their head back to the right again. And
That's absolutely right. And there are intersections where people creep. They creep a little bit.
And
I'm not
know
going to go now.
personally-
They creep a little bit more, and
Yeah.
absolutely, they look one direction because they don't think the other traffic really affects them. They're making the right-hand turn. That's absolutely correct. So
Yeah, I mean, they toss the dice, they anticipate. I know there's close to a half a dozen of those collisions in about the last couple of years in particular. So again, I don't know if there's any way to educate drivers or to give them warning tickets if they've crept over a crosswalk, but unfortunately it's almost impossible to get a good look at traffic when you're waiting to make a right turn without blocking the crosswalk. You can't get good sight lines usually from behind the stop line. So
that's right.
Unless we start getting rid of, especially right turn on reds, which I'm sure is not going to happen, I don't know what else to do besides trying to educate both the drivers and the cyclists about that, or
I
and
think that's
pedestrians.
correct. And it's, it becomes a matter of, in Missoula, it's hurrying. I got to get out. I got to get to where I'm going. Traffic is bad. And then, some of these intersections that I see, very limited ability to get out of the intersection. Again, Orange and Craig is one of those. If you're making a left-hand turn of Craig onto Orange, there are few and far in between holes for you to pull out into, and people get in a hurry. They see that hole coming. They don't pay attention to what's going on left and right of them. And the perfect storm of coincidence happens.
Okay, we have another question from Kip Beckwith. Go ahead, Kip.
Thanks for being here, Sergeant Hebert. Just kind of curious. I mean, I feel like one of the pieces of having safe multimodal transportation options is like enforcement, and obviously we push the education with our cyclists pretty hard, but just kind of curious, like what, if your officers were to see cyclists going the opposite way on traffic, would that person be contacted? And then like when someone doesn't have lights, which, back in college, I was guilty of that, but I'm pretty hardcore about it now. Like, is that person going to be contacted? And, is there something like, maybe we could give you guys some lights, pass out a headlight or a tail light.
So
and then
I'll bring up the light.
I want to jump in on
first.
that one. Excuse me. Sorry, Sergeant, but my office does provide the PD with at least 150. I think last year we even did 200 light sets right around daylight savings time in the fall each year, when all of a sudden your evening commute goes overnight from being in the daytime to nighttime. And so we do try and do a big push around that time. And but I'll let Sergeant Hebert talk about how he gives them out. But we
and then the back end of that, we also push that to our officers to make contacts at, after the sun goes down, to pass those lights out. So yeah, as far as the lights go, I think my officers do a fairly good job of that. Maybe not this time of year where we have a lot of sunlight, but definitely when it gets a little bit darker earlier, we do make contacts for that kind of stuff. As far as moving violations, it doesn't happen a lot with bicyclists. It's gotten to the point now where if you're not a traffic unit, if you're just a patrol officer, it doesn't happen a lot, even with traffic. We make as many as we can, but we're just as busy running from calls where we don't make as many traffic stops as we used to. I haven't talked to my motor units. I doubt they make a lot of bicycle stops either. And it's probably pretty rare that they get cited if they do make the stop. where our contacts come with bicyclists more than often is going to be a vehicle versus bike crash. And then in that case, my investigators will cite appropriately. And I know they have cited bicyclists in the past for either driving the wrong way or, running through a signed intersection when they shouldn't have, things like that. But it's fairly rare.
Okay, thanks.
I guess my follow-up on that is, do you see value in that, Sergeant? And if so, is there, would the board recommending, are you seeking funding for it? And would the board's recommendations, would you value a recommendation from the board about something like that?
Just specifically targeting bicyclists, maybe pedestrian type of infractions. I've never heard of that before. And I haven't really even thought about it, to be honest with you. We do get STEP grants that cover traffic. And, typically it's either a seatbelt kind of issue, vehicles, or DUI kind of issues. I have never seen pedestrian/bicycles kind of targets other than maybe a crosswalk. And again, we're targeting vehicles and not the bicyclist or the, I don't necessarily know how many people are in violation riding the wrong way in a bike lane. And I don't necessarily know that applies to people riding on a sidewalk. I don't think it does.
It
People
doesn't.
walk on a sidewalk one way or the other. The rules of the road really don't apply. So I think education would be more effective than enforcement from our standpoint.
All right. I have another board member with their hand up. I have Jean first and then Jessica. So go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And just, I'll make this quick. In terms, Sergeant, I think of warning tickets and ticketing. I think the things, and I'm just speaking for myself, I think other board members may agree. I know that within Missoula, we have a ban on handheld devices, smartphones, et cetera, texting. And I think if there could be some type of a move to, if there isn't one already, to try to have a surge, if you will, on trying to connect with drivers who are inappropriately distracted because of their cell phones, would be great. I think it'd make a lot of bicyclists feel more comfortable to know that there's not quite as many distracted drivers out there. And secondarily, second thing is checking for the drivers who are failing to yield to pedestrians that are waiting at or in a crosswalk. I know there's a number of cases where there'll be 6, 7, 8 cars go by while a person's waiting for a crosswalk. Sometimes it's me, sometimes a friend of mine. So those would be, I think, the top 2 things for me personally in terms of enforcement on issues that affect the safety and comfort, psychological comfort of people on bikes and people walking.
Thanks, Jean. Jessica, go ahead.
Going back to the ideas for next time and questions that we could discuss next time, I'm wondering about what resources we as bike advocates, bike and pedestrian advocates have for understanding intersections and what the hazards might be at an intersection and how traffic is moving through there. And whether we as a board could put together a resource, like a collection of those things like the police reports and the, I don't know, do we have access to what tickets people might have received or what behaviors are happening?
I doubt that you probably have access to the tickets.
Right.
And it wouldn't come through the department. That would probably have to come through either the city attorney or the courts. And I don't know what their answer to that would be. Again, I think it kind of goes back to me being able to kind of mine the data out of our accident reports. And where things are happening, what kinds of accidents. So if you've never seen an accident report, it basically lists every vehicle or person involved in that. There is usually always a diagram attached to it that basically draws out what happened at that crash, and then there's a narrative. So it should allow me to go through and figure out where it's happening, what kind of vehicles are involved, if it's just usually just cars, or if that's a hot spot for pedestrians and or bicyclists. And then it should tell me what exactly happened. Investigators are pretty good at talking to people and figuring out, were they just not paying attention? Did they just look the one way and make the turn and not look the other way? Was the bicyclist on the sidewalk, or was he in the bike lane? Things like that. That's the kind of data I'd really like to kind of get my hands on and figure out. Maybe with that kind of information passed on to you all, to better educate or figure out how to get that out to pedestrians and bicyclists. What kind of intersections to kind of be wary of. And there are intersections that you just should be careful of.
Right.
I think that's a great thing for us to learn more about in August, and follow up discussions when you have time, and can come back, and maybe, we can have that exchange of information. Our time is running short, but Kip has his hand up again. What was your this will be our last question, guys.
Maybe just quick comment. I just think it would be fantastic if there was some kind of heat map of bike related incidents, and it could be like bike first car, and we could somehow distribute that with like the top 5 safety concerns and how to avoid watchouts, something like that. If that's something that we could get from the police department, I mean, that would be, I think
I can work on it. I can work on it with my GIS guy and with my data guy. That shouldn't be difficult if I can figure out how to mine the data. We do that already with other kinds of incidents. And everybody knows the Reserve Street heat maps. We do that with crashes, vehicle crashes. So I don't think it's much more of a leap to do that with pedestrian and bicyclist kind of incidents. So
yeah,
all right,
that would be awesome.
I want to, Gene has been asking for a while for when we're going to get the safety committee up and running, that to look at bike ped stuff. And now that we're back in the office and the long range transportation plan has been updated, we should be able to get that committee going sooner than later, and we'll have probably 2 members from the bike ped board. I just want to show you that, again, this is not a public consumption map that we can share, but this is only the crashes in 2019. Now, this is not bike crashes. This is all crashes. So this is in the Missoula area. This is only 2019. If I go and add 27 to 2018, it just becomes wall to wall. There's an average of about 2,700 crashes a year in Missoula that are reported. That means over $1,000 worth of property damage at least. And so there are, we do have data. Similar to Sergeant Hebert, our office is understaffed and not been able to spend a lot of time really digging through it. And that's where I think bringing this committee together, that we of course will invite Sergeant Hebert to when we get that kicked off. But having the safety committee, again, the community transportation safety plan identifies 3 major contributing factors to crashes. One is intersections. One is what's called risky behaviors, and that means speeding, intoxicated driving, unbelted occupants, and distracted driving. That's kind of all in one category. And then the other is non-motorized. And the reason, even though the crash numbers are pretty low for bicyclists and pedestrians, crash severity is pretty high. And so anything that we can do to minimize that is going to help us hit our safety targets and safety goals that we have identified. And again, we're kind of following the state's lead on that. So this is a good reminder to me to get that up and going. Again, Gene has been hearing the same excuses from me for 6 months as to why we haven't gotten this up and running. And all I can say is that Aaron and I, every couple weeks, we say, hey, we really need to do this. And then another couple weeks goes by and we haven't done anything about it. So we'll look at getting that committee off the ground sooner than later. And board should stay tuned for that. Sergeant Hebert should keep an eye on the mailbox for that, and we will be bringing a group to the table so that we're not putting this all on PD, we're not putting it all on the board, we're not putting it all on me, but that we're able to identify exactly what are the questions that we need answered and how can we go about doing that through the data, and then from that, what can we do to get the word out to people to try and provide some education, hopefully prevent at least the worst of the crashes from happening. On the plus side of this, you look at this map, even though total crash numbers are going up, crash severity has been going down over the past few years. The number of fatalities and incapacitating injuries is it's actually been decreasing more rapidly than our targets. Our targets said that we wanted a 25% reduction over 5-year rolling averages. And we more than achieved that in the first 5 years of this plan. And so we think we're in a good place going into kind of the next 5 years. But yeah, it really is kind of startling how many crashes there are.
All right. Looks like Jessica has a follow-up question. Go ahead, Jessica, if you want to ask Ben something, or Sergeant Hebert.
Yeah, I was just for Ben. I'm just wondering what you make of that. That the severity is going down, but the numbers are going up. Is it more people or better infrastructure that we?
It's kind of in all of the above. I think probably the biggest reason is that vehicle technology and safety has improved. And so occupants of vehicles are getting less injured inside of them. Missoula, our numbers for bicyclists and pedestrians are so low that it's hard to see any statistical difference. Nationally, though, the numbers are staying the same or rising, and so that's a pretty alarming trend. For people outside of the vehicles, the severity and numbers are staying the same. So the decreases are seen in inside vehicles. But the other side of that is true too. Infrastructure is improving. Roundabouts typically generate as many or more crashes, but the severity just drops way off when you replace a signal with a roundabout. A signalized intersection is, in some cases they're needed, but oftentimes they can be converted to roundabouts at depending on the number of cars that need to get through them and in what times and what flows. But yeah, they can have more crashes, but the severity is much, much lower, just because where the point of impact is a different it's a different place on the vehicle, and it's less likely to cause a severe injury.
Well, Sergeant Hebert, thank you so much for coming and taking our questions, and we would love to invite you back and have sort of this ongoing conversation, if that's okay with you.
Of course. I appreciate you inviting me in. If anybody has anything that you want to reach out and touch me with email, feel free. Do what I can.
Are you Hebert M at ci.missoula?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right. Take care. Bye. All right, Ben, we're moving on. Who did you say should be next?
I was going to suggest Colin next, but maybe he and Danny can Rochambeau for it if neither of them are in a super hurry.
Hi, Colin. Welcome.
Hey, good afternoon. Danny, do you want to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
Myself right now, so it's all good.
Okay, I'll present by forfeit. Yeah, well, I'll keep it brief. But thanks so much for having me. The Office of Neighborhoods. I've been in this role now for about a year, and quite a year to join. A COVID year, tough when we're trying to pull boards, commissions. I know that we started this meeting trying to make sure that we had numbers, and that's been kind of the case across all city boards, commissions, certainly boards of directors and volunteer groups. So that is the case with our neighborhood council system as well. The neighborhood councils system, I'll just kind of give you a background, and then I was thinking we'd just have a discussion. I'd give you kind of just the framework of where Missoula Neighborhoods, or the Office of Neighborhoods, is, what our purposes are, kind of the goals, and how I think some of the work we do and the work and the interest of the Bike Ped Board intersect, and where we could potentially team up. so you're aware, the neighborhood council system, the charter dates to the mid 90s, and the concept is that there are 18 neighborhoods. Each neighborhood has a neighborhood council. That council has an executive team, which is a leadership team, and that leadership team elects someone to the forum. The neighborhood councils are allotted funds based on kind of a metric of per capita, a baseline minimum per capita, and then there's an equity component as well in that. And then there's also a function score. So how active is the neighborhood and what kind of support is needed in the neighborhood. When I took over of this department, we had a neighborhood assessment done that provided some strategic recommendations about how to rework and retool and build on some of the opportunities in the neighborhood council system. They really focus on communication, connection, so connecting residents to each other, residents to city officials, and the folks who hold policies and plans, who build and work on policies and plans, and your elected officials. Really focusing on not only communication, but representation, ensuring that everyone feels included in the neighborhood council system. So that's not just homeowners, which we have a heavily weighted representation of homeowners, but ensure that we over half of Missoula rents, and that number is growing. And so we really need to ensure that there are renters, and then also age and generation, and in some neighborhoods, gender, where we have some neighborhoods that are all female and some neighborhoods that are all male, but certainly ensuring that we get more millennials and Gen Z participants into the neighborhood council system. Beyond that, we're just, so obviously that's the idea of inclusion and equity, as sort of as some of the pieces that came out of the recommendations. And then to rebuild and retool the department. So some of the things that we're putting there is really focusing on the idea of community engagement, education, and empowerment. And so some of the things that we are working on are a citywide survey that is tied also to our neighborhood profiles. The neighborhood profiles kind of work as like an almanac of kind of quality of life metrics of data and data across all disciplines and departments. So things that look at like food access and food security, transportation safety and access, housing, and parks, looking at our tree canopy rates. And so the idea is to create something that be able to lift up a mirror to residents and to neighborhoods, so neighborhoods have a better understanding of what your neighborhood really looks like. Right now, there's not great data, or the data is disparate and kind of all over the place. And the idea is to compile that so people, instead of having a feel for the neighborhood, have some real quantitative components that can, buttress their qualitative ideas around and recommendations or priorities for the neighborhood. Some of the other things we're doing is building energizers, programming some energizers. Those are things like neighborhood cleanups. We're in 10 neighborhoods this year. We're working with our historic preservation officer to work on historic asset mapping and signage. Working with Marie Anderson in the city's forestry department, and Trees for Missoula, Karen Sippy, for a project to green greenways. We're prioritizing Invest Health low mod income neighborhoods that have low canopy rates, and we're trying to have collective impact. So we're building those, planting trees in neighborhoods, in those neighborhoods. We're really focusing on areas that assist with the greenway. With the greenway infrastructure that Ben's team is working on, so that it assists the NTMP. What else? I want to tell you just that some of the other tools that we have are our neighborhood improvement grants. The idea right now is we just went through our neighborhood improvement grants for FY21. There are 5 of those that are recommended, including one for Franklin LaForte, a placemaking project that focuses on transit safety, access, and encouraging ridership and pedestrian safety in the neighborhood. The goal, it's only a $20,000 an annual fund, and so it's a really small fund. I've had meetings with colleagues in my hometown of Minneapolis, and they give away $4 million of neighborhood grants a year. It's a different size fund source that we have. And so we have these kind of really micro neighborhood grants that go up to $6,000. I am requesting, and it is the goal of the forum to increase that so we can expand the impact of these improvement grants. We also have a small fund that allows for traffic circle management and an adopt a traffic circle program. And that we've used, there are about 50 hardscape traffic circles that are in 3 neighborhoods that have been supported for the volunteers that maintain water. They pay for the water, they spend the time gardening, and that just supports those projects. And this year we also worked with one of your board members, James, to purchase more planters to that do native grass and native plant installs so for some planters that'll go in. So we have 16 of those planters that'll be going in to support some of the I guess temporary, quote unquote, temporary traffic circles to help make those feel a little more full, a little bit more robust, and have a little more visual impact or value. And then, lastly, just sort of, I just want to touch on some of the things where we can coordinate. Each neighborhood council has a small fund, and those funds can be used for a number of either for mailers or pulling together meetings and supporting, whether it's a tree planting project, or if it's to support a Missoula Motion Sunday Streets in the Franklin LaFort on August 8th. I'm sure you're well aware. If it's to support those kind of projects, we can use those funds. But we can also use those funds to purchase actually hard purchases, real infrastructure, or things that assist that are in the NTMP, some of those non-engineering solutions. So this year, there are neighborhoods of Captain John Mullen, Farviews, Patty Canyon, Franklin LaFort, Northside, Westside, and River Road ordered "Drive Like Your Kids Live Here" signs. So we actually have a total of 650 signs across those neighborhoods that will go out. Those neighborhood councils have identified traffic as being a significant concern. So that's kind of the full context. Just want to give you I'll just lay that out. Those are the things we're working on. And I think the way we can really engage with each other or assist with each other is if neighborhoods had a better understanding of the not only kind of a data-driven idea of what traffic concerns they have in the neighborhoods, because you could mention a neighborhood and I could tell you the concerns that they're raising, but not only data-driven, but also an understanding of what are the tools and options. And so right now we've been relying heavily on Ben's NTMP and using those non-engineering solutions, and neighborhoods are starting to engage and use that white paper and the guidebook for coming from that. But I think there's definitely opportunity for more engagement around this, more education around this, and we'll see that our neighborhood improvement grants and the traffic circle funds that we have really do work in support of kind of the same objectives that this group gets together about. So with that, I'll just throw it open. Any questions, ideas, suggestions? I'm all ears.
I learned a lot, so that was really helpful. I feel like just learning about the neighborhood council and the funding. So this board can write letters of support to any city department or recommendations for any city department. And so what I heard you say, which we could help you with, is that you wish that you had more money for neighborhood projects that are traffic calming, that support Sunday streets type of activities for community building, and also biking and walking, Drive Like Your Kids Live Here signage, things that mean a lot to this community of people who care about biking and walking. And so what we can do is we can say, wow, what you're doing is amazing with a really small amount of funding. We would, like to recommend that that more funding be allocated. And so that's one way that we could help you. I was intrigued by your mention of the neighborhood almanac. I can't remember what it actually is called, but one of the things that I feel like is in other communities that I haven't seen in Missoula is a walkability and a bikeability score, which is used in real estate. Is that going to be part of the neighborhood almanac?
There is a Ben is ready to cue you in here. I feel like this is your wheelhouse, and you could explain this data measure point, and because I think we dream of like an interactive heat map that could show you the park score and what your walk score or bike score is. But it's I think there's some hurdles there. Ben, is that fair to cue you in?
Yeah, we had a meeting. Aaron and I had a meeting with Colin about this, and like walk score is decent on a by address basis, but on a neighborhood basis, it doesn't tell us too much in Missoula. I don't know if we're not sized correctly or what, but there's not a lot of, in some ways it's too broad and too specific. It's not, it doesn't account for things like people's unwillingness or inability to cross Brook Street to get to a restaurant. And it also doesn't account for like differences within neighborhoods, that like the Southgate Triangle is all considered close to Brooks, even though if you're at the far corner of it, it might be a very long walk to actually get to the mall from the corner of Russell and 39th Street, so it's not quite a sophisticated tool. Certainly the bike score is not there even nationally, is my understanding. If that one needs a lot of work, but it's something that I thought maybe, Colin, that we did land on including, wanting to keep the walk score in there for now, with some caveats that we're trying to work on some more sophisticated measurements of walkability within neighborhoods.
Yeah, so there are some components and some metrics that are data that the MPO holds that will be included. The model that we pulled this neighborhood profiles idea from, borrowed this from the city of Boise, and their neighborhoods department really is really based on the idea of community planning and kind of houses their community planning team. And there is some engagement components there, but it's really, my department, our team, we're housed in the long range planning team right now. So we're somewhere between communications and planning. So we're lumped into this group right now. I think that ultimately the goal of the profiles is to provide something that will be updated regularly. It'll be iterative and it will cyclically be updated. That makes clear where the data is available. The list that we have, the document we have right now, has like 130 potential data points that seem like they could be fun to have. And the Boise model, they list out something like 26 data points, right? And that's probably a little more workable. And so really the key here is we're weaning that down and working through the GIS components there. So we were able to do some spatial aggregation and not all of our census tracts line up with our neighborhoods, right? They don't line up nicely. And so we're just trying to make sure the data we can tell like an honest and accurate story as best as possible, and one that we can routinely update. So this first round will be a PDF. It'll be a printable PDF that'll be available online that you can scroll through. Ultimately, I think that we dream of an interactive map that would be public facing and public engagement. We're just not quite there with our GIS capacity. But I do think that I'm pushing on the pedal for that, or spinning the wheels. Maybe I'm pedaling the bike.
There you go. All right, we got a question for you from Jean. Go ahead, Jean.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, Colin, I'm sure you overheard the comments from Sergeant Hebert about some of the issues of bicyclists being on sidewalks and riding the wrong way, and the issues that poses with conflicts with motorists, that they can tend to be unseen for various reasons. At the neighborhood council meetings, have these kind of things, the type of stressors, if you will, that people who are walking and biking just in their own neighborhoods, not to mention collector streets, et cetera, come up against? If they have these issues and questions and concerns and are sort of feeling some levels of stress, would it be any benefit for somebody from Ben's office or Missoula in Motion or even a couple of members on the board to come and have a discussion or presentation on how to avoid or mitigate conflict points in neighborhoods for safer biking and walking?
That's it certainly comes up, and it comes up routinely in a number of neighborhoods. Unfortunately, Ben is fantastic at responding to those issues and also coming to present to neighborhoods. Most recently, we had a meeting with Amber Sherrill, council member, and the Farviews Patty Canyon neighborhood. And the hard reality is that Ben is in a tough position of not always confirming or providing affirmation of the concern. Say, well, we're doing this as a data-driven approach. So the concern may be real, but let's actually look at what are the options, and also what does the data prove out. And so we've had a really great discussion, and one in which the residents were really receptive, and the community members understood that where they have agency and where they can take action, and so that their first step is these "Drive Like Your Kids Live Here" signs, and with the idea of exploring other concepts, other roles. So something our department we're working on is kind of a 3E approach. So again, it's this education, engagement, and empowerment. And then from there, it's sort of this idea of actioning. What can a neighborhood do? And so we support small, discrete neighborhood projects. We support community campaigns. So some neighborhoods are building campaigns around multiple issues. So if that's traffic safety, or it could be housing density and housing security, whichever neighborhood it is. There's some variety there. And then finally, the third area of actioning would be neighborhood plans, either updating or working on neighborhood plans as our department has the capacity, which is something the city has not done for quite some time. So, that's the ultimate goal, is that we're going to be able to support through that 3E model, that eventually we'll be able to support the actioning of that as well. So right now we're able to support that through limited funds through the traffic circle grants, as well as our neighborhood improvement grants, and then supporting the councils, and the councils can act on those things with council funds. So that's where we're at. But right now, in terms of connection, Ben does a fantastic job of answering and stepping into that. And it's not only Ben's department. The Upper Rattlesnake is interested in the Barrow Pit Trail, and the concern about how that crosses the road and safe traffic there, and that involves engineering, and that also involves parks and open space management, and so we coordinate. We as a team, the city, we are coordinating well on those. But every neighborhood has different issues as it relates to traffic. And really access and safety for mixed modalities. So I hope I answered that question.
But just quick, when you say data driven, can you explain a little bit more about that? I mean, you're just not talking about. So if somebody brings up a situation, say, well, gee, I feel like when I'm on the street, I see that either cars are going too fast, or that I'm not seeing very well, or any number of things. And is the data driven saying, well, we don't have any crash data, or what other types of data are you looking at?
We're looking at speeds, volumes. We're looking, and not just motor vehicles, but we try and collect bike and ped volumes as well. We're looking at sight triangles, visibility. We look at any recent changes and development patterns or land uses. We're really trying to look at kind of the entire context when we get complaints about an area of what's happening. Crash history might not tell the whole story, and so we're trying to figure out what else, what can we do. classification of roadways and what do we need for emergency services, that sort of thing. And that was kind of the way that, or at least that's the way that we're handling the NTMP, the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, which we're leaning on pretty heavily for our local streets. And then our more major routes, whether they're locally owned or more often than not there's some MDT involvement, we're then kind of bringing those through the CIP process and ranking those, again, using all the similar data points that we talked about during Aaron's presentation.
I was thinking a little bit more, sorry, about the, in terms of just in the neighborhoods, typical conflict points at intersections, et cetera, that the people who are out there riding with their kids or by themselves, do they understand these conflict points and how they can kind of get a sense of, because if they know where these kind of conflicts are for right hooks, et cetera, that there's something they can do in how they approach an intersection, et cetera, in terms of checking out other traffic to mitigate their risk of those type of incidents. That's more or less kind of what I was thinking about in terms of contacting, educating cyclists and pedestrians through the neighborhood councils.
Okay, I feel like that this discussion has been really productive and I've learned a ton, but we are really tight on time because the agenda is so full. And so, Colin, what I think about you coming is that we've all learned a ton about the neighborhood council system and the neighborhood office, and we would like you to come back and talk to us more. And so I will invite you again. And then, like I said, I feel like our role is to recommend, we like what we're seeing. We would like to recommend that there be more funding for what we like that we see.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me. And I'd love to, whenever we have a chance to connect about this, if there is any kind of education component or piece that, or beyond, I love the funding recommendation or referral if possible, any support is really appreciated. But yeah, if there's any way that we can coordinate to work to help get the message out that Eugene was talking about, this question about how to really empower residents so they understand either how to make a complaint and log that correctly, or to ensure that's getting to the right place, or that people understand what their options are in terms of safety as they are a rider in a neighborhood. So if you have a presentation and you'd like to workshop that or take that around to neighborhoods, more than welcome to put you guys or any board member on to those schedules. Obviously the goal is here to be proactive. So as this board and as your members are able or interested, if you have materials you would like to either you want help disseminating, getting out, or a presentation you want to provide either to the forum or to each neighborhood leadership team beyond what Ben and his team do, certainly welcome to that, and would love to make space for that either on our website or in those meetings. So,
well, I think, Gene, that sounds like a great opportunity. So I'm sure Colin could follow up, or you can follow up with Colin and talk about doing one of those follow-up events. Awesome.
All right. Hey, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Colin, great to see you. I think both of us have been out of the office lately, and so I look forward to touching base on some of these projects sooner than later.
All right. Daniel Gunlock.
Hey.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I guess we're getting pretty close on time, so I'll go through all this pretty quick. And I don't know if you guys are like me, your house is like 90 degrees right now anyway with the so ready to get to the river. So just talked a little about, I'm the supervisor for the ASUM Office of Transportation. I'm guessing you've probably had Jordan Hess, my boss and council person on here a few times before, so you probably know a little about our office already. But I am a transit supervisor, and the vast majority of our budget, which is student fee driven, goes towards transit programs. However, we do have about 5% that goes to bicycles and bicycle programs. And there are also we're one of a few different departments on campus that have some involvement with bike programs. So I'll just kind of go through some of the programs that we offer. So we have cruiser bike rentals, and these are pure city bikes. We do anywhere from weekly to yearly bike rentals. We used to have a yellow bike program that you're probably familiar with. That was you could just go check out on a daily basis. But we had to do away with that program just because it was very labor intensive, and we, like everyone, we're short staffed, and especially short staffed right now. So we just focus on our semester and year rentals. Those are for student, staff, and faculty, as well as affiliates. But we have, this includes lights, locks, free maintenance, all that stuff. We also have a number of fix-it stations around, like self-serve fix-it stations around campus that we manage. Currently, there's one over by the UC. I think there's 2 others on campus and one of them was formerly Mountain Line owned, and we are now operating that for Mountain Line. So we're really working to get those up and running again. We offer bike registrations through Project 529, same as the city. So students call us up and come in, we help them get registered. We also have the stickers and the shields. And then we also just we're there to be just a general source of information. So helping people, we do personal consultations to help people plan their trips. We provide links and resources on our webpage, and just try to help people just any way we can to promote sustainable transportation. Some of the new things that we've started up since I kind of took over this position is we started doing open hours at our bike garage, it's called, which is actually just one of our bus bays that somebody accidentally ran their truck through the bay. So the doors don't work anymore. So now that's where we store all of our bikes, and we have Mondays and Fridays, we have a 3-hour open period during the semester where people can come in and get advice on their bikes, get repairs done, check in and out bikes. We now have one student bike mechanic who oversees all of our bike maintenance routine and all that, and we have one additional helper. Both of them are also bus drivers, and that's where most of their time goes to. So it's a very part-time gig for them. We also just started doing it's called Mellow Monday bike rides, just short bike rides in the afternoon on Mondays. We started doing them last spring, and I hope to continue doing them into the fall. And that's just to highlight new bike infrastructure, safe commuter routes. Also just offer some education, just basic bike safety. A lot of students that are coming to campus they haven't been biking since they were in grade school. So a lot of this stuff's new. We also have a lot of international students who don't know about our rules and regulations. So it's a good way to kind of get the word out there. Elsewhere around campus, UMPD sells locks, manages all the abandoned bikes. They also oversee bike auctions at the end. Usually there's one about the start of fall semester. It's a good opportunity to get a bike for cheap. Campus Rec, the outdoor program, they do bike maintenance classes. They do occasional rides. Those are for a fee. I think they do like a $50 bike maintenance class. And then, of course, Facility Services oversees bike facilities design and construction. You asked to know about some of the challenges that we face. So we did a survey back in November just to learn a little more about the bike community on campus and what they'd like to see specifically addressed. And actually, if you saw, I emailed that to you, Jesse, if you wanted to distribute that to the group at all. There's a lot more details on there, and I won't go through it very much today, but just a few of the things that were brought up there. Need for more covered, secure bike parking spaces on campus. We don't get a lot of rain compared to other places, but we have your bike's exposed out in the elements, and we also have issues with theft on campus, just as we do everywhere else in the city. And there are people who would be willing to pay to put their bike away somewhere secure. We have a lot of people who say they put their bike in their office so they don't have to deal with any of those concerns. So we really need some sort of storage, whether that be lockers or cages, somewhere where people feel comfortable leaving their bikes for a work day. There's a strong need for just better winter maintenance of bike facilities on campus, bike lanes. I see a lot of people that say they bike less in the winter, not so much because of the weather, but just because they don't feel safe using the bike lanes on campus. They feel like they have to drive out into the road and they have to deal with debris and all that stuff. And it's definitely a deterrent for winter biking. We also have a tendency to have a lot of our major bike racks on campus just get covered in snow. So that's something we've been working a little bit with facilities on. We did start doing a campus bike working group, which I organized back in December and ran that for 5 months, just kind of as a trial period, just to try to get a little better collaboration between different departments on campus. And Ben was kind enough to step in on that a little bit, and we had some mixed success with it. I think it was, we did learn some things as a group, definitely some things we discussed, just the need for a centralized bike hub on campus. The two major providers of bike services is our office and campus outdoor program. And we're both basically located as far away from student housing and where the bulk of student activity is as you can be. So to give students directions to come over, say they get a flat tire, they have to walk their bike 3/4 of a mile across campus to come over and get service. And it would be much more ideal if we could be located right next to student housing or somewhere in that central campus area. It'd be a lot more convenient. And I think some students don't necessarily want to go walk all the way to that back parking lot behind the police station. So that's definitely something to consider going forward. Obviously, it would be great to have one bike program manager on campus instead of several. We don't have any real guiding documents on campus for bike programs infrastructure. We have, I think the campus master plan is about 20 years old now. So, and then we have a transportation and kind of a sort of an active transportation plan that's about 6-7 years old that does have a few guiding principles for biking and walking on campus, but no like standards for bike infrastructure and like bike racks, things like that. And that's why you see so many different types of bike racks on campus. Aside from that, there's a lot, we'd like to see a north-south Murray Street connection going all the way through. You have that nice cycle track that stops right over near the music building. And then you have the Murray Street Greenway on the other side of campus. We don't have any real good through access on campus for bikes. So we also just improved outreach and education is another thing. And we're working a little bit with UMPD has been really receptive to some of the different ideas we've had there. So looking forward, probably the biggest thing that could be down the road for us is possibly a major reconfiguration of our office. ASUM Transportation could be taking over parking. UMPD sounds like they're happy to not have to deal with parking. So there's been discussion of switching revenues there. So they would be student fee covered and we would be primarily through parking revenues, which when it comes out is a roughly similar pot. So there would be a lot of growth in our office, possibly a full-time TDM position. It would look different, but it would also provide us some opportunities. Looking at, it'd be great to have interactive bike maps on campus that really label where all the parking and facilities and services are on campus, fix-it stations, things like that. I've seen some universities that have really good ones, and it would be great if we also had something like that. And along those lines, wayfinding signage. I know we talked a little about that, Jesse. We are looking at how we can get wayfinding on campus. We did meet with a company that Catherine Auger from Missoula Motion recommended, and we've been having some discussions with that, and that's kind of going to the higher ups now, but they have kind of real-time wayfinding signs that also include information on bus routes and bus trackers and things like that. And so that's one option. What it comes down to though is what little budget we have. We don't have the capacity for spending a lot on bike racks and on wayfinding signage. So it's a matter of, can we convince partners and can we convince university officials to help us out with that?
Daniel, is it okay if we open it to questions now since
Yeah.
our time is running short? I just wanted to say I visited MSU and their wayfinding signage is in town. So the city of Bozeman has provided wayfinding signage to get to the university from several different parts of town, which is super cool. And I discussed with Daniel on email the bike parades that bike friendly universities have in May to celebrate Bike Month, which I think would be a really fun way for the university to get involved in Bike Month. And then I did notice in the capital projects report for the university, the $100 million investment of the next 5 years included the north-south bicycle throughway in the article in the paper.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I
That's-
know that's whatever, but I thought it was a good, positive, wonderful sign. And obviously we would be super supportive of that. Okay, who else has a question? All right. Okay, well, I feel like we need to continue to work together and I've learned a ton. It sounds like you're being really proactive and a lot of changes are occurring and I think it's all sounds like it's going in the right direction. So good job. And then we'll, like I said, ask you to come back and keep us updated, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Take care.
I know we only have a few minutes left, but there are some key updates that I wanted to provide, if that's all right. And Jessica,
Go for it.
I want to let everyone know that the Higgins study, I mentioned last month that we had a consultant under contract. There's going to be a public involvement phase that kicks off next week. I believe we will be at Downtown Tonight next week. It will be kind of one place to be. The general public will be invited. We're going to have a series of stakeholder meetings. The consultant will be in town. They're Boise based. They will be in town next week. We're going to have a series of stakeholder meetings with business owners and property owners and neighbors along the Higgins route over the course of the week. Also with MDT. We're going to be at Downtown Tonight next week. The following week, we're going to be at Out to Lunch and the Clark Fork Market also to kind of talk with people. We'll have an Engage Missoula webpage live, hopefully by the end of this week, that will include an interactive map where you could drop pins and share ideas. There's also always, once that's up and live, you'll be able to email directly to Aaron and I any sort of questions or concerns that you might have as that project moves along. That again is we're calling it a corridor plan for Higgins as a way to implement the downtown master plan. We're going to take some of the ideas from that plan as a starting point, but do the technical analysis to get MDT on board and get the public on board with identifying what is the way that we can really make Higgins between Brooks and Broadway fully multimodal. Sunday Streets is coming up this year. We're going to, instead of doing it on Higgins, it's going to be, which was a challenge, not only due to COVID crowds and planning, but also with the bridge construction, it really is infeasible. And so we're doing it in the Franklin of the Fort neighborhood as a way to highlight the traffic calming program the NTMP project that we did over there on Kemp and Schilling. And so there's going to be a loop route using Kemp and Schilling, so that it is a couplet kind of back and forth that begins and ends in Franklin Park. And so there's going to be activation along the way. We really need volunteers for that. I believe Catherine sent you all an email asking for that, but we do really need some volunteers, and there's going to be the shifts are short, probably about half the event, and so you would have time to enjoy it. There's also going to be opportunities to, depending on where you're stationed, if it's at one of the locations with new traffic calming, there are going to be opportunities to kind of bring the public into helping decorate the bulb outs and traffic circles that have gone in there. And so that's going to be a really pretty cool interactive event we feel like this year. Related to that, Missoula in Motion is resuming their individualized marketing or door-to-door trip planning program that we did in the West Side in 2019. We suspended it last year during COVID when we weren't in the office to train anybody, and going door to door seemed like a pretty dumb idea. Now that things seem to have gotten a little bit smoothed out, we're ready to resume that. And this year, it's also going to be in the Franklin the Fort neighborhood. We're following the Route 2 through residential areas, and so we're really using Johnson as kind of the backbone, which runs right through the middle of that neighborhood. And we're going to be sending out surveys and questionnaires, information requests, so that people can, if they're interested in learning more about how to get around sustainably, they can request information from us. We are in the process of hiring an intern to help implement that, and that person would go visit with the people, identify what talk to them about what their challenges and barriers are, deliver the materials that they requested, and have individual conversations about, well, what do we do at this intersection? How exactly do you use the diagonal crossing at South and Johnson? And what the research shows is that sort of hand-holding and really direct communication, even if you're spending an hour and a half with one person, that the kind of benefit is it's far greater than pouring money into mass media and doing big ad campaigns and things like that. And so in terms of lasting behavior change, and so we're really looking forward to get that going again. We felt like, we've been hearing that this is the wave of the future since 2011, and we kind of have half-heartedly done it before. 2019 we really dove in, and then 2020 we were kind of slighted. So we're excited to get that going again this year. And then I'm working with Chad and Brian to implement some of the things that, the recommendations that you guys made with our public works project list. Chip seal season is scheduled to begin maybe as soon as next week. And so we are looking forward to restriping bike lanes on North Russell, Door Lane between Brooks and McDonald, High Park Way, and a few of the others. We recently implemented the project that we had identified on Missoula Ave. We're actually calling that part of the NTMP because it's really more of a greenway connection than it previously was bike lanes, but that wasn't quite the right application. And so now there's a dedicated, I don't know if anyone's been up there yet, but there's kind of a dedicated pedestrian space on one side of the street, and then a shared lane for northbound bicyclists and northbound drivers on the right side of the street, with some speed tables to keep drivers' speeds low. And the neighborhood, we had some good neighborhood meetings and feedback, and so far they seem pretty excited about how that's shaping up. But we're going to continue to monitor that, and after a few months, when people are a little more used to it, we're going to collect some speeds and volumes and compare those to before, and see if we're going to recommend any tweaks before it gets chip sealed next year. With that, we're at 5. A final plug, this weekend in Butte, there is a Divide Scramble, it's called. There's different lengths, but Bike Walk Montana, statewide advocacy organization, is hosting that event, and it's coming up this weekend. If you're not busy and interested in riding a long distance through a supported mountain bike ride, but still fairly substantial, you can find that information at dividescramble.com, I believe, or Bike Walk Montana Divide Scramble. You can Google that and it would come up.
Thanks, Ben. I feel like that Missoula Ave is awesome. I've been on it. I love it. I think it has completely transformed the whole street. It is so much better, and it's so fun to see the bulb outs being removed at Rattlesnake School.
That's another one.
And,
yep.
Yeah,
and those
that's
rapid flashing beacons are going to put in. Chad was up there today getting the bases set for those, and so there's going to be, even though the bulb outs are disappearing, we think that we're enhancing pedestrian safety by adding those flashing beacons in.
Yeah, I think it all is very exciting. The one thing that we didn't get to on the agenda is the letter of support for Marshall Mountain. I didn't want our committee to ignore one of the biggest events in the biking and hiking and skiing world, which was the purchase of Marshall Mountain by Izzy Dog LLC, and then the rental to the city of Missoula for 2 years for $10, and then the public comment phase. And so I wrote that letter of support just saying, thank you so much, city of Missoula and Izzy Dog LLC, for making it possible. and recognizing our core values. And so Kip has a quick question. And then if you guys are willing, I would love for us to vote on it so we can send it out as just an expression of gratitude. Is basically, it's a thank you note. Go ahead, Kip.
I thought it was great. Can you add my name to it? I think my name's
Oh.
left off. Sorry.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we'll do that. If someone, if everyone's had a chance to read it and you feel comfortable, if someone would make a motion to approve the thank you letter, essentially, for that, I think it would be worth sharing that with the mayor and city council.
Make a motion to approve it.
Thank you,
Second.
Jessica. Thank you, Jean. So the letter with the addition of Kip Eckwood's name, sorry, Kip, we'll make sure that's added on. I'll send that out to the mayor and city council and just saying, wow, this is amazing. Thank you so much. You've had the whole meeting to think about the August time period. This can be done on email, but as it stands, the meeting would be August 3rd at 3 p.m. But if you feel like your summer needs to be, if we need to push the meeting to the 10th or beyond, I'm okay with having that discussion over email. Does anyone have strong feelings?
The moving part there that I don't know if you caught in Aaron's presentation is that the timing of TTAC and TPCC in August would mean that in order for the board's recommendations, if there are TIP recommendations for this coming TIP, then it would be good to get them in on August 3rd.
Okay. Then we'll just keep it the way it is. Yeah, he did. I remember him saying that, and I was like, when's the meeting? And then it kind of, I feel like it wasn't answered. So, okay, we'll stick with the next meeting being August 3rd at 3 p.m. on Zoom, where hopefully we'll have another full agenda. Anyone else have any board comments here at the end? All right. Enjoy Sunday streets and have a safe summer. Thank you guys so much.
I
Thanks,
don't know
Ben.
that I mentioned when Sunday Streets is. It's going to be August 8th. So there will be the board meeting before that, but I still wanted to put it on people's radar.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.